Welcome to the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast, presented by the Fantasy Football World Championship, home to the industry's most accurate rankings.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast. I am your host, as always, Adam Krautwurst with Full-Time Fantasy. And with me again for the second or third or 10th time, because we love having him so much, is Jack Kohlscheen. Welcome to the show, Jack. How's everything going?
Going well, man. Good to see you. It's that time in the season when, depending on how your team's doing, it's like, let's either wrap this up, get to the playoffs, or it's like I need a few more weeks just to make up the difference.
I know. I feel the same way. The last week 6 and week 7 were sensational for me, and I loved it. And it's those weeks where you want to absorb everything, and everything's great, and you can't wait to do waivers and lineups. Week 8 was horrific, and it's funny. Like I'm not a guy that looks at the scores during the week. But I just knew, like, okay, like I'm not seeing the usual suspects aren't really going off. And then no one owns more Gibbs than me. And it still, I guess, didn't matter. Devontae Adams crushed me. A bunch of I lost a couple. I lost a 5K, Jack, by a point, which is just excruciating. Like, how do you go to bed after Monday Night Football? You lost by a 5K by a point. So
I've got a team that this was the first week I benched DeAndre Hopkins. So I hear you.
Brutal. But listen, we're grinding it out every week, doing waivers and all that good stuff. So we'll jump into it this week. You and I have a team that I think you drafted that we're co-owning together that's doing pretty well. Where are we in the overall rankings for the World Championship? Top 20 or so?
We dropped a little bit in week 8 to the top 50, top 55, somewhere in there. We didn't have a bad week. We just didn't catch any of that.
But we won.
We won. So
love it.
That's all that matters.
That's right. And I'm looking too. I'm going to do waivers and all that type of stuff today. And I'm looking. And so how I rank my teams on the site is I do it by like league rank. But I've got like a 4th place team that's not in the playoffs, but I've got 2 7th place teams that are in the playoffs. I'm like, well, this doesn't make any sense. I can't go by this. So,
I organize by points, and I've got like at the top, it's usually 1, 2, 3, and then you'll get like the 2nd place team where it's your lowest points of all teams. It's just, variance. But
I have a Circa Las Vegas championship team that sits like 40th overall, and it's like it's in 7th place, and it's 4-4. It's a 4-4, and it's got like a 100-point lead on first. It's like, what is going on? So, anyways, let's dive into it here. I'm sure everyone knows has experienced that and what we're talking about. Let's talk about a guy that's kind of breaking out here. Trey McBride for the Cardinals here, a tight end. Full time is not tight end premium, so a lot of times. You find tight ends and waivers. Can you hear that upstairs, Jack? Can you hear that? It sounds like I got an avalanche coming down over here above me. It's funny.
A little bit.
Hey, guys, I'm going to do a podcast. Can you be quiet? No, we're going to jump as loud as we can on the ceiling above you instead of actually being quiet.
I thought you were looking around for full time. It's like if Scott's behind you or something.
That's right. Yeah. Scott's behind me. So anyways, Trey McBride has a breakout game, right? We've been kind of waiting for this. Zach Ertz finally goes on the not finally goes on the IR, but Zach Ertz finally gets out of the way. I don't want to make it sound bad. Gets out of the way. And last year's 2nd round pick for the Cardinals goes off 26-point fantasy output here, 88% root participation, 40% target share. What are you thinking?
I think this is going to be a case of, last week's probably going to be the best week of the season. And it's certainly not going to be always like this, but I do think this is the turning point because, like you said, his route participation skyrocketed without Ertz. Like his prior high was just around 50%. So just getting onto the field that often, he was targeted in week 8 on, like you said, 40% of his, the routes run. So that's really positive. I think I would maybe temper some expectations because, like 6 of his catches came in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
I could see Kyler, which, catches are catches, garbage time counts
Right.
too. But I could see Kyler Murray and his return maybe making it a more functional offense overall instead of just having some dump offs. And Arizona does have the 5th most difficult strength of schedule for tight ends rest of the season.
Good point.
Not necessarily. I don't know if he'll be league winning at the tight end position, but given that it's second half of the season and he's a waiver wire pickup, I think he's definitely a valuable ad.
Yeah, definitely a valuable ad depending on like the injury. I mean, I'm adding him over like a guy like Tyler Higbee, stuff like that, especially with the quarterback situation there. Murray coming back, giving them a big boot, maybe not a big boost, but a boost at the quarterback position there, coming off the injury. But a guy like Stafford, like who knows how long he's going to be out? But I would think he'd be out at least through the bye week for that. So that's kind of where I've got him in that range. It kind of has like Michael Mayer vibes to me. Like the guy has one good week, and then all of a sudden everyone going crazy over him. Although McBride has, this is his second year, so he's developed a little bit more than Mayer has. So yeah, we'll see about that, but certainly worth an ad, and not even really available in a lot of leagues either already. People were kind of waiting for this for sure. All right, moving on to another position here. Kind of this guy has been probably one of the biggest busts of the entire season. And we're not talking injuries here. Obviously, injuries happen and guys bust that way, but Tony Pollard, he's just not. I mean, they put up 40-something points last week, I think. They've had major scoring weeks, and he just isn't a part of it. And no one can really figure out why, except he's just not efficient, right? I mean, missed tackles forced, 50th in the NFL for running backs, average yards after contact, 36th in the NFL. Like he's just not been good. Yeah.
I mean, the optimist in me and the Pollard fan, wants me to say he's just, in week 8, he didn't even touch the ball in the fourth quarter. He's just been in funky game script after funky game script. But if you look, he was an efficiency guy. And this season, he's got the lowest yards per carry of his career by like 3.9 versus a 5.1 career average. Lowest yards after contact per attempt, that's 2.55 this season versus 3.86 career. The lowest rate of explosive runs for 10 plus. The second lowest yards per route run in the receiving game of his career. So it's just falling off, and it's not clear whether it's coming back from the injury and related to the lack of explosiveness, if it's age related, or if it's the going from Kellen Moore to Mike McCarthy. But whatever it is, I don't see any indicators that it's going to turn around anytime soon.
And that's absolutely right. And PFF, he ranks 3rd worst in expected fantasy points per game. Like, right now he's sitting at, I think, RB 18, I think, in fantasy and PPR. RB 16. I mean, he's right there with James Cook. I mean, Devin Achan is still ahead of him. He hasn't played in 3 weeks, and he's been splitting carries with Raheem Mostert. So, Pollard's been an absolute. But now again, you're not cutting him. Obviously, you're not dropping him. But it's a situation where maybe in Dynasty, if you're that route, see if you can trade him. I traded him for Devonta Smith in the offseason and loved it. And now I love it even more. Not that Devonta Smith's having a great year, but he's, 5 years younger and a receiver. Still. Right. That's right. So yeah, I mean, Pollard, I don't think it's going to get much better for him. And again, I think it's been unlucky game scripts too. Like you said, I mean, you get guys like Jalen Hurts, right? Jalen Hurts, every drive ends at the 1 yard line, where he can just fall into the end zone. He plays in a 99-yard field, and they always get to the 1. Gus Edwards last week. He's just plowing in these short touchdowns. Odell Beckham has 3 touchdowns called back. Gus Edwards scored. Like, it's just, some guys get all the luck, and this year Tony Pollard hasn't been good, and he's not getting any luck. So, unfortunately, you're probably stuck with him at this point. But yeah, it's just going to be a down year for Pollard, and we'll see where it goes from there. But speaking of a team that's just been unlucky, the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, first you lose, statistically, right? The greatest receiver we've ever seen through his first 3 or 4 years. And then you lose the heart and soul of the team, the quarterback, Kirk Cousins. Where do you go from here? Obviously, they trade for Dobbs, which is good. It shows that they're still trying. They've won three straight games here. But how do you see this going forward? I mean, I have some Jefferson teams where I'm still alive and like, hey, if I get Jefferson back, now I lose Cousins. I've the lot of Addison teams, stuff like that. What should we expect? Maybe not this week. Jaron Hall is probably starting this week. But what can we expect when we get the new quarterback in?
Josh Dobbs did well for the first part of the season, and he played well for Tennessee last year in these limited outings. I do think, though, there's enough tape on him now this season. The teams were able to start figuring him out, which we saw in the second half of the season. He's certainly a serviceable quarterback, but I don't think that people quite realize the level that Kirk Cousins was playing at this season. He was leading the league in pass attempts, pass completions, and was tied for most passing touchdowns with Tua. So he was playing lights out as far as his career goes and supporting that team. And I mean, really, the only better signings you could have hoped for was maybe getting Kyler instead and having the Cardinals tank. Or right. I heard some rumors about Jameis Winston. That might have been fun for fantasy purposes, but any available quarterback is just going to be a considerable step down and could really lead to a much more conservative offense where they're just afraid to pass that often and everybody suffers. I mean, Justin Jefferson's going to get his. He always does, but I think it could start to look closer to what we've seen from Devontae Adams this season.
Yeah.
Having those quarterback problems. I think the bigger hit, though, is to T.J. Hawkinson and Jordan Addison.
Yeah.
That was a top 3, top 4 tight end and wide receiver playing his way into wide receiver 2 territory.
Yeah.
And now, I think Hawk will be just another streaming tight end, maybe streaming tight end plus. Like I'd put him pretty comparable to Trey McBride right now. And, Addison is back to a flex play.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, Addison might even be less than a flex play once Jefferson gets back. I think it's right. Jefferson's still he's not gonna probably get the quality of targets, but I still think he's gonna get his targets, and it's gonna be like an offense like the Bills where they run through it's Diggs or bust essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And then Gabe Davis has one game every 4 games. That'll be Addison, type of deal. So it just hurts them all. It hurts a lot of the Cousins teams out there too. A lot of super flex Cousins teams are in big trouble because there's and all the injuries to the quarterbacks. We'll probably get into more of it here, but it's just a complete mess out there. This week is I was looking, I have a lot of teams where I went elite quarterback and I have no backup, and I'm just, all right, I'll just wait till their bye week to grab them. But by their bye week 13 is like a big one. Week 10 for Mahomes. Mm-hmm. I can't wait. There's going to be no quarterbacks left on the waiver wire. So I have to compete with all the other teams this week that had injuries and try to grab someone before there's nothing left. It's crazy.
Yeah. Between the injuries and QB's getting benched and the turnover, it's kind of creating a bit of a grab in this particular waiver wire week to, get at least your starting quarterback if you waited or had something happen like Cousins. And then certainly as we start to look ahead to the money weeks in the tournament, looking at a quality backup quarterback with a good schedule for those 3 final weeks. We're about time to start looking to do that too.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting because this week was outside of quarterback, it's a gross fab week. There's nothing out there. I mean, we're looking at Khalil Shakir as the golden.
Hey.
No,
we'll get to that.
That's right. All right, moving on. Chuba Hubbard took over as the number 1 back there in Carolina. You're a Carolina guy. You could probably give us the insight over there. But I mean, Miles Sanders, I mean, I don't know if this was a ease him back in or is he just straight up benched. Chuba's played better than him all year. What do you think of going forward here?
I mean, I think it's a backfield to avoid if at all possible.
Yeah.
It's my hunch. I think that Sanders is being eased back in due to both the most recent injury, but he's kind of had a pattern of injuries for this whole season during the training camp and all of that. So I believe they're easing him back in. And the reason for that, Hubbard had 15 rushes to Sanders' 2, which on its own you would think, well, he's now the workhorse. But then Raheem Blackshear also got 3 rushes and 2 targets. And so the fact that Blackshear is playing as well seems like it was a close game. So, I think we can say Sanders is at least better than Raheem Blackshear. The fact that he's not getting out there for those snaps, it seems to be injury related as well. I mean, Hubbard was also just bad from a real life football sense. Like there was a series where he was stuffed on 3 straight runs inside the 5. Then they brought out Sanders for 4th down and ended up passing and not, turnover on downs. But it was not an effective outing for Hubbard. So if it was a coaching decision and not injury related, his ineffectiveness might have played him back into a more evenly split committee. But certainly something we'll have to continue to monitor.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I wouldn't drop Miles Sanders at all.
No.
And I would hope that, cross my fingers, someone in my league does after they see this. Always been her and now this. Like, I'm just going to drop them and pick somebody else up. Because, I mean, listen, every running back, especially, I mean, Miles isn't super talented, but he's not behind Raheem Blackshear. Right. It's talented either. I'm looking at benches, especially if you went hero RB or this. I mean, you've got guys on your bench. I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is on benches. I mean, Miles Sanders has a better shot at production than Clyde Edwards-Helaire does. So there's stuff like that. Definitely don't drop him, but you're certainly not starting him yet at all. A guy that hopefully people started this week, and I know a guy that you were higher on this week is Javonte Williams for the Denver Broncos. He finally had got himself a touchdown finally. 82% rush share finally, 66% snap rate, 19 fantasy points. That's what we're looking for from a guy. You kind of saw him progressively getting more work, progressively getting better than a cold game where they want to keep the Chiefs off the field and a game script where they're winning, right? It was kind of perfect for Javonte Williams.
Yeah, I'm buying what we're seeing because I think for Javonte, it's been an expectations problem. Like if you asked us prior to all the preseason reports and things like that, he's coming back from injury. We plan, they brought in Pirine as kind of the bridge. It'll be a mid-season till he's really able to start taking off. And then his recovery, and we get all these reports on how well he's doing. And that may be the case, but he was still recovering from a really terrible injury. So the fact that now we're seeing him start to consolidate the work, he had a season high at 63% of snaps. Of the rushing attempts, he had 27 of the 32, and he was splitting the receiving work with Pirine. This is what we would have expected had he not been such a freak athlete and been able to recover as fast as he did. He was able to get out on the field and make himself available, but there's still, I believe, those lingering effects that were sapping explosiveness and his ability to make cuts that now he's able to start overcoming that. I do think that he has a tough road ahead of him. The Broncos have the second most difficult strength of schedule for running backs rest of season, but it actually lightens up a bit weeks 15 to 17. So if you can make it there, it certainly gets better in the important weeks.
Yeah, he's on a bye, and then he gets the Bills, who do not have a good run defense, in 2 weeks. Monday night in Buffalo. I might be at that game, actually. We'll see. We'll see what the weather looks like. And then he gets New England and the Chargers the last 2 games of the season for the fantasy season. So certainly could pop off there. A guy that I would be buying for Dynasty too, and a guy that I really like what I've seen is Jaleel McLaughlin. I mean, the guy, even when he doesn't get a lot of touches, he looks so explosive on a lot of his runs. So, he's a guy that I'm still holding this year because you're an injury away from him playing. I think P. Ryan is, I don't know what his contract is and all that, but I mean, P. Ryan's he's older now. He's he's just he could be a cut in the off season. McLaughlin's way better than P. Ryan is. So P. Ryan could be the RB2 there next year behind Javonte. And he just looks really, really good still. All right. Speaking of looking good, Khalil Shakir for the Buffalo Bills here. Big night on Thursday Night Football last week. And he doesn't score. I had a buddy of mine who's texting me. He's like, I don't normally bet whatever, but he sends me this random. He knows I'm a Bills fan. He sends me this random Khalil Shakir anytime touchdown bet. And the Bills come out. The Bills. It's the only bet he made. I'm like, take the Allen over. Take the Gabe Davis over. Every bet I gave him hit. He didn't take any of them. He took the Khalil Shakir. He comes out, catch. I'm like, he's gonna have 10 for 180 and no touchdowns. And you're not gonna. And
he caught that one that was within the 5.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's rough.
But anyways, to get back to it, no Dawson Knox. Dalton Kincaid gets the Dawson Knox targets, gets his first touchdown, looks excellent. But that other role went to Khalil Shakir. And I think that as long as Knox is out, Shakir, hopefully, from a Bills passing perspective, will get those targets. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think they don't have another tight end that they want to put on the field behind Kincaid and Dawson Knox. So you see that 11 personnel coming. And since Shakir played in week 8, 70% of his snaps from the slot. So being out there on the field makes a big difference. He saw 6 targets, 6 receptions, 92 yards. And, was showing a 2.79 yards per route run and an 8 out of 9, which actually is a little interesting for a slot player. They kind of inverted our expectations, at least in that week. They were playing Gabe Davis more up close.
Yes.
And actually having Shakir, the slot, go out a little bit deeper, which I think it reminds me of when the Chargers started bringing in Mike Williams last year instead of just having him run those deep routes. So it's going to be an interesting changeup, but I think, he's certainly a viable flex play for at least the next 3 weeks. And I think there's a good chance, given kind of some of the fits and stumbles that the Buffalo offense has seen throughout the year. They've been great in some games and terrible in others. Given how they played on Thursday, and if this works, if Kincaid, becomes the guy and they see the advantage of having 3 receivers on the field more often, I could see Shakir playing himself, in his second year, playing himself into a more long-term role. But, it's certainly optimistic because it appears that he's beat out Deontay Hardy and whoever that other guy was. I remember there was a cycle of 3 that they were pushing through. He's at least made the third Bills wide receiver, and now that's becoming a more prominent role.
Yeah, no, I think I can't describe to people. Like, Khalil Shakir is not a great player, but he is so much better than Dawson Knox. Like, Dawson Knox stinks. I've been saying this since his rookie year. Now, again, you give him a pass his rookie year, like a second-round tight end out of Ole Miss, maybe, that never got a lot of targets there. Comes in, has like a big play on a Sunday. I was at the game against the Bengals, trucks 3 people and takes one like 60 yards. And all of a sudden, everybody thinks my nickname for Dawson Knox is Rocks Knox because he has hands of stone. Everybody I text during the game, he stinks. He dropped every pass that matters. He drops. He dropped one to seal the game against the Giants 2 weeks ago. Like, Khalil Shakir is so much better, and to have him and Kincaid working, I mean, the offense just was so much better. Again, they only scored 24, but they easily could have scored more there. So yeah, no, I think Shakir's worth a pickup, but I think it probably only lasts for 3 more weeks because of, they're going to go back to Knox because they signed him and they like him and all that stupid stuff. But hey, maybe this week in a Sunday night shootout against the Bengals. And I will say that the only touchdown the Bills had last year in the postseason game against the Bengals was Cole Beasley out of the slot. So maybe that's a
That's science right there.
That's science.
You can't argue with that.
He's a big science guy too, Cole Beasley. So, for sure. All right, we got a quick start sit question here. Going back to McBride, would we start McBride this week versus Cleveland, with a terrible quarterback, or in Njoku versus Arizona, or Taysom Hill versus Chicago? I'm definitely going Taysom Hill against Chicago. I just feel like he's going to get quarterback reps, receiver reps, tight end reps, running back reps. I think he's just going to get too many targets around, and they're all valuable around like the 5-yard line, the 10-yard line for me to take him off the field. He's got that spike 30-point week. Well, what do you think, Jack?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the past 3 weeks since week 6, Taysom Hill is number 2 at tight end, only behind Travis Kelce. Short sample size, and it happens in bursts, but it seems to be working with them right now. New Orleans has been working through a lot to try to figure out how to get the offense moving, and it seems like Taysom's been a part of that. And the Cleveland defense against tight ends,
against everybody.
Yeah. It's tough. So I'd definitely go Taysom.
Yeah, I don't want to start anybody against Cleveland. Jimmy asked a question. Speaking of the Bills, can we talk rest of season schedule for Kincaid and Cook? I would be happy to. The Bills have the best tight end schedule.
They're teeing you up.
Rest of season. Right. That's right. They have the best rest of season schedule. I'm Dalton Kincaid. I mean, he's got 6 great matchups: Cincinnati, Denver, the Jets. Believe it or not, Jets are so good against receivers. You go to the tight end, and then to end this season, they have Dallas, Chargers, New England. So I really like Kincaid. I'm kind of the opposite on Cook. I mean, they just signed Leonard Fournette, who's a better pass blocker than Cook, who can catch passes. Cook's still going to have his role, but now I think Cook is 4th on the depth chart at the goal line. Right? You got Fournette, you got Allen. And you got the other, you're going to get Harris back soon on top of that. So Cook's I'm not in on Cook. I wasn't in on Cook in the preseason either. I just thought that he wasn't going to get the goal line touches. He doesn't. They don't throw the ball to the running back. They haven't. So I'm out on Cook, but Kincaid, I love it. Jack.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said. James Cook, I was not as excited about him going into the season. I'm also not as worried about Fournette.
Sure. I get that.
I think James Cook profiles as a really steady, low ceiling, high floor receiver or running back who's going to get the work between the 20s.
Yeah.
And I think Latavius Murray finally just had his last ride last week and just played himself out of a job.
Yeah.
And without having him be reliable on the goal line and then Damian Harris on IR, I think it's just they need somebody who they can at least count on to do the simple things.
And listen, I would want nothing more than Allen to get in the shotgun, and he's got Cook and Kincaid and all his receivers out there, Shakir and all, obviously Diggs and Gabe Davis, and just spread it out and light teams up, but they just don't. There's a disconnect. I mean, we could talk about this all. There's a disconnect between the offensive coordinator and the head coach. That's why Daboll left, because Daboll wanted to open it up and run Josh Allen. They haven't run Josh Allen. There's a big disconnect there between the offensive coordinators who they've had and the head coach, the defensive coordinator head coach who wants to slow the game down and all that stupid stuff. But James Cook, I mean, and I will say he's been better than he's RB17. You probably drafted him after RB17. So you've gotten enough out of him. It's not like he's been a bust at all. He's been fine for you. But going forward, Fournette's definitely better than what the Bills had there before. And so I don't think that helps Cook at all. So, but Kincaid, I'm excited about for sure. All right, moving on to a guy that I know you want to talk about.
I do.
Demario Douglas for the Patriots. Talk to me about him. And before you do, I'm sure you'll get into it, but I'm going to steal some of your thunder here. The Patriots wide receiver strength of schedule rest of season is top 8 or 9. Because I know the quarterback strength of schedule is actually number 1 or 2 going on for the rest of the season. So talk to me about Demario Douglas.
Well, this past week we saw him on 84% of routes, and he was targeted on 26% of his routes. He led the Pats in both of those metrics, and that's even with Juju Smith-Schuster coming back. You've got Kendrick Bourne out for the rest of the season with the ACL, which opens up a lot of opportunity. And even in the short term, Devontae Parker out with concussion. I think they actually found that the offense is working better through some of their younger receivers. It certainly takes some time under Belichick to get the rookies more involved, but he's proving himself to be pretty reliable. He's got 1.93 yards per route run. That's actually better, and that's to this date. So for the first half of his rookie season, he's got a better yards per route run than Chris Godwin, Christian Kirk, Garrett Wilson, Jordan Addison, and Josh Downs. I think he's got tons of opportunity. And, looking forward, I think absolute worst case scenario, this is Wan'Dale Robinson. And I think, best case scenario, you're talking like a dark horse candidate for this year's Amon-Ra St. Brown, somebody who's just going to absorb targets, move the offense, and have that consistent role. I don't think he's Amon-Ra, but I also don't think he's Wan'Dale. So I think for the rest of the year, he's going to be a really valuable flex play.
I like it. Yeah, someone that people might want to pick up on waivers this week. If he is still available, he's probably not going to be available in Jack's leagues. I'll to tell you that.
He's available in one, and I almost didn't talk about him tonight for the purposes of depressing to make sure I'm going to get it, but
we got to do it for
the 11 other people in that league. I'm bidding so high, you probably shouldn't even try.
That's right. Stay away from him.
Yeah.
Stay away from him. A guy that's available on every single waiver. I know we didn't put this in the show notes here, but a guy that I'm just kind of going through, waivers and rosters and stuff and seeing stuff. Jamison Crowder back in Washington has an opportunity there, goes for 22 fantasy points and kind of gets that slot role due to an injury there. Is he worth a pickup? Is it just because there was an injury? Washington's selling. I feel like it's just that role that leaves behind all those targets. What do you think?
Yeah, I think if I saw the practice reports for today, Curtis Samuel not practicing, due to the injuries from that game.
Yeah,
it's tough to say. It could be something, but I worry more that this is Eric Bieniemy taking kind of the offensive philosophy of Kansas City of just rotating receivers and taking that to the Commanders. With the exception of, last week, Jahan Dotson was not included in that rotation, but now is finally, back into that. But it just seems like it between the receivers and tight ends, it's kind of whose week is it this week. So there are certainly worse plays, and you can probably, like you said, he's available in all your waiver wires, and you might be able to pick him up for $1 if nobody's watching this show. But, certainly you get what you pay for.
For sure. I think he's probably more of a DFS play or something like that rather than waiver dollars. Okay, quick question here. Start sit. Would you start Demario Douglas this week or Dotson versus New England? I'm going to let you answer this first, Jack. You're the Demario guy.
I'd say it's a me, Demario, because I think the Commanders' defense was terrible and just got worse as they've traded away both of their edge rushers. I think the New England defense at times can stand up, and Sam Howell has been great in certain games, but has really struggled against an average or above average defense. It's really those plus matchups he takes advantage of. I think, we've seen a week from Dotson, but there's been a real steady climb for Demario Douglas. And there's so much opportunity there in front of him, just from I think the base case projection of the volume he can expect, unless this is a Hail Mary, I need some serious points, come from behind sort of situation. I think Demario is much safer.
Demario Douglas, I said top 7 or 8 receiver schedule rest away. It's actually top 4. He's got 4 really good matchups, including this week against the Commanders, who now have 0 pass rush, by the way. You know what I mean? Like, they're not
certifiably, objectively 0.
Yeah, they're not trying
0.0.
Right. Anthony brings up in the chat they lost Bourne as well. The Patriots did for the year, unfortunately.
Yep.
So yeah, no, I'm in there. He's got Washington and then Indy, who's another positive matchup, then a bye week, and then he comes out again. I mean, gets a Bills and maybe a shootout week 17. So we'll see. Demario, I think is certainly an ad, and he's available in some of the leagues that I got. So I'm definitely gonna put some waiver claims in for him. All right, what else do we got here for the people? Tomorrow night, Will Levis and the Titans. To Titans offense, Titans team. Hey, listen, they don't sell anybody. They keep the gang there. Will Levis. Talk to me about Levis because I went back and watched his stuff. Looked competent, fine, looked athletic, looked strong, strong arm. Some of it's having that DeAndre Hopkins, but listen, no one else was doing it there before him this season. To me, I get that. Now I know it's not the same draft capital and stuff like that, but I get, although it could have been because he was projected to maybe be picked in the top 5. I get the Justin Herbert vibes of the comes in his rookie year and rookie year and immediately is awesome. And you're like, well, I don't know. He's a rookie, going to take time. But sometimes you just, especially with all the quarterback injuries, you got to take a shot, cross your fingers. Maybe Will Levis is going to be great the rest of the year. You can't say, no one can tell me either way he's going to be terrible or he's going to be great. My only problem is they don't want to pass the ball a lot. They don't want to have to do that. They want to run the ball with Derrick Henry. They're not going to throw the ball a lot. But I think Levis could be a spark for some of these fantasy teams down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, I think I actually thought the Justin Herbert comp as well myself. He's got a cannon for an arm. It was kind of unheralded compared to some of the other quarterbacks in both of their respective classes. Week 8, he had the second highest passing ADOT out of all quarterbacks, 11.8 yards per attempt. So he's clearly moving it down the field. The issue is whether this is he Justin Herbert or is he Jordan Love? Right. Because he only completed 19 passes, which, it wasn't an efficiency thing. He was highly efficient. There was just not that many passes. Of that 19, 7 of them went to running backs in the backfield at a negative ADOT. 3 of them went to Kyle Phillips at an average of 2.3 yards. And 4 of them went to Chigakonkwo at 6.5 yards. So what this shows me is that Will Levis, this is kind of the overall philosophy of what the Titans like to do. It's going to be feast or famine. It's going to be, not very many opportunities, a lot of the short game, a lot of the running to set up for a few deep shots. And some weeks those are going to connect and you're going to have 4 touchdowns. And some weeks they're not, and you're going to have very little to go off of. So he's certainly probably he is likely to be the most exciting QB remaining on the waiver wire in terms of upside. But part of that upside is just the we don't know factor.
Right.
If there was Kyler and Will Levis on a waiver wire, I'd certainly be taking Kyler. And we could be eating our words here in a few weeks, or he could be benched. They could go back to Tannehill once he's healthy again. That wouldn't surprise me, given kind of the grumpy old man cred from Mike Vrabel. So,
yeah, I think I actually have a main event league where I've got all these quarterbacks that got hurt and got benched, and I'm by. And I need a quarterback for this week, and I'm going with the Levis, but Thursday night in Pittsburgh just sounds horrifying against that pass rush, against that defense, those fans. But if he can look competent in Pittsburgh, because it sounds like everything I'm reading, everything you're telling me is he just takes what the defense gives him, and I'm okay with that. And then take those shots. But I think he's an exciting player. He also had 3 carries and he had 3 designed runs and 2 scrambles. So he does do a little work there with his legs. So I like what I saw. I like what I saw. So if you got to roll the dice, but I also don't mind starting Pittsburgh defense against him either.
Yeah, so, I think he's actually ideal on teams where, like, if I just lost my quarterback this week, Kirk Cousins or something like that, or Desmond Ridder, God forbid, I don't know if I would be going to Will Levis to be my solution for the rest of the season. I actually think he's really ideal if you have somebody like Lamar or Hurts or somebody like that, where you've still got bye weeks coming up, and there's the injury risk with the more mobile quarterbacks. Lamar has a history of getting injured, and so he's ideally, if you have the fab, he'd be a great spot to put on rosters where you need to you have some time to wait and see, play out for another week or two, see if he takes over the role, see if he's a fluke or not, and maybe he catches it in weeks 15 to 17. That's the ideal situation. But if you just lost Kirk and you're looking at him and Derek Carr, I get that too.
Yeah. Week 13 is Lamar's bye week. That week, the Titans have the fourth best quarterback matchup against Indy that week. So you could do worse than that for sure. But like you said, he might not even have the job by then. Yeah. We just don't know. It's been that kind of year for sure. All right. One of your guys here, JSN, scores a touchdown again. I think it's his second score, and I think in as many weeks. JSN scores, looks good, doesn't get a ton of targets, but what are your thoughts on JSN, the Seattle offense moving forward here I think they got a pretty tough matchup this week. I can't remember who they have.
Cleveland.
That's right.
Yeah. So yes. You know what? I every time I come on, I'm contractually obligated to talk about JSN. So thank you for allowing me to fulfill that obligation. He's up to he's getting 9 yards a target since the bye week, which I think goes back to what we were talking about the first time, where now that they're able to get out of 12 personnel a little bit more often, they've got more stability on their offensive line. Their left tackle's back, and they signed Peters to be the new right tackle. There's a little bit more stability, so they're allowed to play more 11 personnel. He's able to get on the field more often and move further down the field before being targeted. And, he also broke his wrist. And so, when it comes to rookie wide receivers, one of the concerns is always pass blocking. And I would imagine it's harder to be an effective pass blocker when you're recovering from a broken wrist. I will say that I like to look at the numbers and the evidence and make data-based decisions. That being said, I refuse to accept a reality where something called Jake Bobo will be a better rookie wide receiver than JSN. They seem to scheme him up in the red zone. I have no idea what his special skills are that deserve this sort of treatment, but I'm going to bet on Jackson Smith and Jigba over Jake Bobo. And I believe he will continue to see this ascension. He also has Seahawks wide receivers have the best strength of schedule for weeks 15, 16, and 17. So
absolutely,
I don't know if my wide receiver 2 rest of season prediction is going to happen, but if he erupts and makes up for it in the money weeks, we'll call it even.
It's all that matters. Yes, I was just looking at that. He has the second best remaining schedule, the Seahawks wide receivers do, and the number one by far for the last 3 weeks. Philly, Tennessee, Pittsburgh. That's what you want him for. You want him for that that shootout for sure. Yeah, Bobo's killing me. I mean, how is this guy freaking getting out there and getting? It's gross. It's freaking gross to watch.
It sounds like a Madden create a character and somebody sat on the remote.
That's right. That's right. It's just so bad. But we do have a question here, a defensive question. I'll let you answer it first because I'm going to look up some schedule stuff here. But would you start with all that said about Levis? Would you start Pittsburgh defense over New England defense versus Pittsburgh versus Tennessee, New England versus Washington, Chargers versus Jets? I love all of those options, to be honest with you. So most of the leagues that I play in, it's like what I'm looking at is who has the best chance to score a touchdown, because that's really a lot of these. It's all that matters. Like one team might get 4 sacks and 2 picks, and it's 9 fantasy points. Like who cares? You want a team that's going to score touchdowns. So I look a lot of stuff I look at is obviously quarterback play. And then the D-line versus the O-line matchup, because D-line creates havoc, which creates strip sacks and fumbles and picks and touchdowns. So that's really what I look at the Titans defense. The Titans O-line stinks. Washington gives up 1 million. I mean, this guy's on pace to get sacked, 100 times. And as bad as Zach Wilson is, they keep him pretty upright and they hand the ball off a lot. So I feel like that would be my last choice. But who would you pick between Pittsburgh and New England?
Yeah, I am actually making this exact decision in several of my teams this week. I would take New England first with a good deal of distance. Then it's Steelers, and then it would be the Chargers. I think of the three of them, we were just talking about the big cannon arm from Will Levis. That has the biggest potential to go wrong, to go seriously wrong, and to end up with a very low score. We could just, because we don't know, and the Steelers don't have the tape on Levis that they do, necessarily in other games. I think the Commanders have proven themselves to just give sacks to the other team in buckets. And this is the New England defense. Defense is the one thing they do well, especially in these matchups against inexperienced quarterbacks. And like you said, I think the Jets know the situation they're in offensively, and so they do they limit the opportunities for things to go too poorly. Feed Breece Hall, keep it simple. So, and
that's what the Titans could do this week. They could hand the ball off to Derrick Henry 30 times to keep Levis safe on the road against that ferocious defense. So I think I'm with you. I think I'm New England, and then I'm Pittsburgh for sure on that. But you probably can't go wrong on any of those. And whoever scores the defensive touchdown would be is the true answer. Okay, for that one. So, guys, thanks so much for your start sit questions. That was a lot of fun, for sure. And Jack, thanks for joining me tonight again. You got any waivers? You got any waivers left to do tonight, or what? What are you doing?
Oh, that's tonight.
Lineups, waivers.
You know me. You asked that question, but you know that I go through like 6 drafts of waivers every week. So yes, finishing up that. By the way, are you going to be? Are you the type of Bills Mafia that are you going to jump through any tables if you go to that game? Or
I will not. I will jump through a table if the Bills make it to the Super Bowl or something like that. Then I would.
That's fair.
I'll even video it for everybody. But no, I'm the guy. I've been to 100 Bills games in my life. I just go now for my kids because they want to go. So, and
are they going to jump through a table?
Hopefully not. Hopefully they're smarter than their father is. So,
I hear you.
With that being said, everybody have a great week. Good luck this week. Good luck on waivers, and we'll talk to you guys next week.